Welcome to English Story Collection. Some houses are just houses, and some houses are a question waiting for you to arrive. Mark was 28 years old. He was a graphic designer, and he worked from home, so his home was also his office, his kitchen, and his whole small world. It was a good life. It was also a very quiet one. One Tuesday in April, a letter came. Not an email, a real letter in a thick white envelope from a lawyer in a town called Oakwood. Mark read it twice, because the first time it did not make sense. His great-uncle Arthur had died, and Arthur had left him a house. Mark had met Arthur only once, when he was 6 years old. He remembered almost nothing. A big, warm hand, a smell of wood and old paper, a voice that laughed easily. Now that man had left him a house at number 42, Elm Street. The lawyer explained the rest on the phone. Arthur had sold everything in the last year of his life. His car, his land, his books, most of them. He gave the money away, quietly, to people nobody in the family knew. He kept one thing: the house. He was very clear about it, the lawyer said. Everything goes. The house goes to Mark. Why me? Mark asked. He did not know me. There was a pause on the line. He said you would ask that. Mark took the train on a Friday. Oakwood was small and green and slow. Elm Street was exactly what the name promised. Tall old trees on both sides, wooden houses, wide grass, and children's bicycles left on the ground, as if nobody in this town had ever stolen anything. Number 42 stood near the end of the street. 2 floors, dark wood, a long porch, a garden behind it that had grown wild and happy. The lawyer gave him 2 things, a heavy iron key and an envelope with his name on it in old, careful handwriting. Mark stood on the pavement in the blue evening light, with the key in one hand and the letter in the other, and read, Mark, if you are reading this, the house is yours, and I am somewhere else. Please live in it for a while before you decide anything. There is one room on the 2nd floor that is locked. Do not break the lock. Do not call a locksmith. I mean this. The key is hidden inside your own memories. And remember, every evening at 9 o'clock, the clock in that room strikes 9 times. Mark read the last line again. Every evening at 9, the clock in that room strikes 9 times. But nobody had lived in this house for months. The house was cold and smelled of dust and old wood. Mark turned on the lights, one room at a time, and the house slowly woke up around him. Downstairs there was a kitchen, a living room with a heavy table, and a library. A real library, with shelves on every wall, from the floor to the ceiling. Upstairs there were 3 doors. 2 opened. 1 did not. The locked door was at the end of the corridor. It was dark brown, with an old metal lock and a small keyhole. Mark put his hand on it and pushed, gently. Nothing moved. He did not push harder. He had promised, in a way, and he was surprised at himself for keeping a promise to a man he could not remember. He made tea. He sat in the kitchen. He looked at his phone. At 9 o'clock exactly, the house made a sound. It came from upstairs, from behind that door. A deep, soft, patient sound. 1, 2, 3. Mark stood up so fast that his chair fell over. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then silence. A very complete silence, the kind that makes your own breathing sound loud. He went up the stairs and stood in front of the locked door for a long time. He listened. He heard nothing at all, no ticking, no movement, nothing but a closed room and a lock that did not want him. He did not sleep much that night. In the morning, everything looked ordinary again. That is the useful thing about mornings. Mark started in the library, because that is where a curious person always starts. He pulled out books. He opened boxes. He found postcards from Greece and Japan and Peru, tickets, dried flowers, a small stone with a hole in it. And on the bottom shelf, under a wool blanket, he found a notebook. Brown leather, soft corners, full from the first page to the last. It was Arthur's diary. Mark sat at the desk under the yellow lamp and read until his eyes hurt. Arthur had been a traveler. He had worked on ships. He had repaired watches in 3 countries. He had collected old and broken things and made them work again. The diary was not dramatic. It was small and warm. A man writing about days. Then, halfway through, one line stopped him. Arthur had written it slowly, in bigger letters, as if he wanted it to be found. The greatest treasure a person finds is not in the ground. It is in what he leaves behind. Mark read that sentence maybe 10 times. And between the pages, a few chapters later, there was a photograph. It was old, with soft white edges. A younger Arthur, laughing, holding a small boy in his arms. The small boy was Mark. He was 6. And in Arthur's other hand, held up to the camera like a joke, was a wooden box. A box made in the shape of a book. Mark looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he looked up at the walls of the library. Hundreds of books. Maybe 1,000. The key is hidden inside your own memories. He had not remembered the box. Not until he saw the picture. And then, suddenly, he did. Not the box itself, but the feeling of it. Something smooth and heavy, put into his small hands, and a laugh above his head. Mark started at the top left corner of the room, and he began to touch every book. It took him the whole afternoon and most of the evening. He pulled each one forward with 2 fingers, felt the spine, and put it back. Paper, 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 cloth, paper. He found 4 coins, a train ticket from 1981, and a lot of dust. At 9 o'clock, the clock upstairs struck 9 times. Mark stopped, listened to it, and went back to work with a strange, calm feeling. The house was keeping time with him now, and it did not feel frightening anymore. It felt like company. And then, on the 3rd shelf of the last wall, between a book about birds and a book about bridges, his fingers found wood. He pulled it out. It was heavy in a way that paper never is. A wooden box, made to look exactly like a book. On the front, carved into the wood, 4 words. The time we spend. Mark's hands were not completely steady. The lid did not want to open at first. Then it did, with a small dry sound, like a door in another room. Inside, on old green cloth, there was a key. It was bronze, dark with age, with a beautiful worked handle. And on the flat part, in tiny letters, someone had cut 2 words and 2 numbers. Elm Street 42. Mark did not run upstairs. He sat down on the library floor with the key in his hand, and he waited. He could not explain why, but it felt wrong to open that door in the middle of the afternoon. Some things want the right hour. He made dinner and did not eat much of it. He walked around the garden. He watched the light go orange, then blue, then almost gone. At 8:59 he went up the stairs. The corridor was dark. There was an old painting on the wall, a woman in a yellow dress and a wooden chest under it. Mark had passed them 100 times in 2 days. Tonight everything looked like it was watching. He put the bronze key into the lock. It went in as if the lock had been waiting for it, which of course it had, for a very long time. He turned it. The lock opened with one clear, soft sound. Mark pushed the door. Warm light came out into the dark corridor. And he stopped breathing for a second, because the room was not dark at all. Behind him, in the silent house, something began. 1, 2, 3. He stepped inside. 4, 5, 6. The sound was not behind the door anymore. It was here, all around him, close and deep and alive. 7, 8, 9. It was a workshop. A long, bright room under the roof, with a big window, a wooden work table, and tools laid out in careful rows. Small brass wheels and wooden boxes, springs, glass faces, a soft smell of oil and old wood, and clocks. Clocks on the walls, clocks on the shelves, clocks standing on the floor like small, quiet people. 20, maybe 30 of them, and every single one made by hand. One of them, on the wall by the window, was still going. It had been going all this time, alone, in a locked room, patient as a heartbeat. That was the sound. No mystery. Just a machine that an old man had built well, doing its work in an empty house because nobody had told it to stop. Mark walked around the room and touched almost nothing. On the big table, there were boxes. Not tool boxes, paper boxes. And they were full of letters, hundreds of letters. He opened one, and then another, and then he sat down on the floor between them and read for 2 hours. Dear Arthur, the shop is open again. My daughter works with me now. Thank you for the money and for never once asking me when I would give it back. Dear Arthur, I passed the exam. You were the only person who said I could. Dear Arthur, I am writing because my father died last month, and I found your letters in his desk. And I understand now who paid for our house in the bad year. There were photographs, too. Weddings. Children. A small shop with a new sign. A woman standing in front of a truck with her name painted on the door. This was the treasure. It was not gold, and it was not a secret. It was 30 years of quiet help, kept in paper boxes in a locked room, where nobody could see it and nobody could thank him for it. On the corner of the table, on a clean sheet of paper, there was one more letter. His name was on it. Mark. If you are here, then you did not break the lock, and you did not give up. Good. That was the whole test, and there was no other one. This house is not just walls. It is a place where time stops for a moment, so that you can understand what actually matters. The clock strikes 9 every evening to say a simple thing. The day is gone. You cannot have it back, but tomorrow is not gone yet. And you can do something good with it. The tools are sharp. The wheels are in the 3rd drawer. Somebody has to keep the clocks going. Mark sat in his uncle's chair until midnight. He went back to the city on Monday, and everything there looked smaller than it had looked on Friday. He gave notice on his flat. It took him 3 weeks to move. Now Mark lives at number 42, Elm Street. He still designs, in the mornings, at the desk in the library. In the afternoons, he is upstairs, in the bright room under the roof, learning something that takes years to learn badly and a lifetime to learn well. The first clock he repaired alone took him 4 months. It runs about 2 minutes slow. He has decided to leave it that way. And every evening at 9 o'clock, the house makes its old soft sound, 9 times, in a room that is not locked anymore. Mark usually stops whatever he is doing and listens to all 9.